When I turned 30, I did something most people only daydream about. I packed my bike, strapped on a small leather bag, and set out to chase the world. It was a decision born not from recklessness but from the silent persistence of a childhood dream. I had promised myself that before I grew too old, before the world's demands buried me, I would ride through it, see it, taste it, and breathe it. The first miles felt intoxicating. Endless roads unfurled before me like ribbons of freedom, the wind pressing against my face as if trying to test my resolve. Each town I crossed seemed smaller than my hunger for discovery, each mile another thread cut from the fabric of routine life. For the first time in years, I wasn't anyone's daughter, employee, or secret disappointment. I was simply a woman on a bike, alone and unbound. But freedom has edges sharper than chains. By the time I reached North America, my journey had carried me into a wilderness far denser than I imagined. The sun dipped low behind the trees, shadows stretching like dark fingers across the narrow trail. To my right, a river ran fast and cold, its surface glittering faintly as dusk surrendered to night. I pressed on, confident the forest would break soon. Yet the path only narrowed, the air heavier with the scent of damp soil and pine. When the last light disappeared, unease slid into my chest. I had no tent, no fire, no plan for a night in the wild. My legs ached, my throat was dry, but more than anything, a lonely silence pressed in from every side. I had dreamed of adventure, yet in that moment I felt like a child who had stepped too far from home. I stopped, resting my bike against a tree, and considered my choices. I could try to push through the darkness, risking a fall on the uneven ground, or I could surrender to the night and hope the forest offered me mercy. Neither option promised comfort. My heart pounded with the recognition that freedom and fear sometimes arrive hand in hand. The river's murmur was the only sound until something broke it, the distant echo of hooves striking earth. I froze, straining my ears. It grew louder, closer, and soon a chorus of voices rose with it. Torchlight flickered through the trees, shadows shifting in chaotic rhythm. A group of riders, their laughter sharp and careless, moved through the forest as though it belonged to them. My breath caught. Relief at not being alone clashed with the caution of meeting strangers in the middle of nowhere. I tightened my jacket around me, eyes fixed on the approaching glow. Whoever they were, they had found me, and whatever my journey was meant to be, it had just taken a turn I hadn't planned for. The glow of torches cut through the trees before the riders themselves appeared. Horses emerged from the shadows first, their hooves crunching the undergrowth in sharp rhythm. Then came their voices, deep, careless, tinged with laughter that felt too loud for a place so silent. I stepped back instinctively, my bike still resting against the tree as though it, too, sought shelter. There were 6 of them, perhaps more, dressed in leather vests and worn hats, rifles slung casually across their backs. They looked like people who belonged to the wilderness, who knew how to bend it to their will. Yet it wasn't the men who caught my attention. It was the woman at their center. She sat her horse like she owned the night, posture easy, eyes glinting with something between curiosity and command. Her hair spilled from beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and even in the dim light I could see the confidence etched into every gesture. While the others joked among themselves, she studied me in silence, her gaze unsettling in its steadiness. The group slowed as they reached me. One of the men barked a question I didn't catch, but she lifted her hand, silencing him without a word. Then she leaned forward slightly in the saddle, speaking directly to me. "Out here alone." Her voice was smooth, unhurried, carrying both amusement and concern. I nodded, unsure whether to explain or defend myself. The forest, the bike, the night, it all suddenly seemed foolish. She tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at her mouth. Brave. Or reckless. Sometimes they're the same thing. Her words sank deeper than I expected, brushing against something raw inside me. I wanted to answer, to tell her about my dream, about the need that drove me here, but all I managed was a quiet. I was just passing through. For a moment she said nothing, her eyes holding mine with unnerving intensity. Then she gestured toward the torches behind her. "We have a camp not far from here." Food, fire, a bedroll that isn't dirt. Come with us, you'll be safer. The invitation startled me. Safety. Shelter. Exactly what I needed. And yet I hesitated. Something in the way she spoke, half invitation, half command, made me wary. I didn't know her, didn't know any of them, and the wilderness was no place to gamble on strangers. Still, the forest around me pressed heavier with each passing second. I imagined a night alone against its silence, every branch snapping in the dark like a threat. My fear betrayed me, and I found myself nodding. Her smile deepened, though it wasn't entirely warm. She dismounted with practiced grace, handed her reins to one of the men, and stepped closer. "Good choice," she murmured. "You'll ride with me." And just like that, the path I thought I had chosen for myself was no longer mine alone. Their camp wasn't far, just a clearing carved neatly between the trees, fire already roaring in the center. Saddles and gear were strewn about with the casual disorder of people who traveled often and worried little about appearances. The hunters went about their business, tending horses, sharpening knives, laughing as though the night belonged only to them. But my attention never left her. The cowgirl moved with an ease that set her apart from the rest. She gave quick instructions, and the men obeyed without question, confirming what I already sensed. She was the one in charge, whether through wealth, charisma, or something else entirely. She gestured for me to sit near the fire, and soon a tin plate of roasted meat was placed in my hands. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until the first bite burned my tongue. She watched me eat with a faint smile, her own plate untouched. "You've been riding long?" she asked, her voice carrying easily over the crackle of flames. "Long enough," I answered. Since 30. I hesitated, realizing how strange that sounded. My 30th birthday. I promised myself I'd see the world. On that bike. She nodded toward where it leaned against a log. Her smile sharpened. Not many women choose the road like that. Not many women feel free enough to try, I replied before I could stop myself. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or approval. She leaned back, stretching her legs toward the fire. "Freedom," she repeated, as if testing the taste of the word. "It's a luxury. Some inherit it. Others fight for it. Some never touch it at all." The conversation slipped into a rhythm, questions and answers exchanged like cards in a game neither of us wanted to end. She asked about my childhood, the towns I'd passed, the people I'd left behind. I found myself speaking more openly than I expected, the firelight softening the edges of my hesitation. In turn, she confessed pieces of her own story. A wealthy father who bought her horses instead of affection, a life spent being envied yet never understood. Her tone lowered when she admitted, almost casually, "I don't usually fit the role they expect of me. A husband, children, a name tied neatly to someone else's. That's never been me." The way she said it left no doubt. My pulse quickened. I felt the unspoken truth between us, like sparks from the fire catching in dry grass. As the night deepened, the camp grew quieter. One by one, the others drifted to their tents, leaving only the two of us beside the fire. The air had grown cold, but I hardly noticed. Her gaze lingered on me, steady, unguarded. "There's only one tent left," she said finally, her tone soft but deliberate. "And only one bed inside. You can share it if you don't mind." I should have hesitated. I should have thought of the life I had left behind. But her eyes held me, and I found myself nodding. The tent was small, its canvas walls breathing faintly with the night wind. Inside, a single bedroll stretched across the ground, thick enough to shield from the cold but narrow enough to force closeness. A lantern cast a muted glow, shadows flickering against the fabric like restless spirits. She entered first, pulling off her gloves and tossing them aside with practiced ease. I lingered at the entrance, torn between gratitude for shelter and the unease of what silence might hold. "Don't hover," she said softly, patting the space beside her. "The night's long and you'll freeze out there." I stepped inside, closed the flap, and sat down cautiously. The warmth of the fire outside had faded, leaving only the heat of our bodies. For a while, neither of us spoke. She stretched out, folding one arm beneath her head, watching me with that same unflinching gaze. Then, with a slow deliberateness, she shrugged off her jacket and laid it aside. Her shirt clung to her frame, shoulders relaxed but deliberate in their display. My throat tightened. The air between us grew heavier, charged with something unspoken. "You're shivering," she murmured, her hand brushing my sleeve. "Take this off, you'll be more comfortable." I hesitated, but the way she spoke, gentle, persuasive, unraveled my resistance. I slipped out of my jacket, folding it over my knees, though my heart pounded as if I had just stepped into unknown terrain. Her fingers lingered briefly on my arm, warm against my skin. The touch was casual enough to be denied, deliberate enough to be undeniable. And then, without asking, without hesitation, she leaned closer. Her lips met mine. The kiss was soft at first, exploratory, tasting of smoke and something sweeter beneath. It startled me, not because I hadn't imagined it, but because I had. For months, maybe years, I had starved for this kind of closeness. To feel wanted, to feel seen. When she pulled back, her eyes searched mine as though daring me to object. I didn't. Instead, I leaned forward, closing the space myself. The second kiss was different. Hungrier, desperate. My hands found her shoulders, and hers slid down my back, pulling me nearer until there was no air between us. Every thought of restraint fractured. I remembered the partner I had left behind, the promises I once meant to keep, but they felt distant, faded echoes against the immediacy of her breath on my skin. She broke the kiss only to whisper, her voice rough with emotion. "Stay here. With me. You're so hot. I don't want to let you go." The words burned through me, both invitation and confession. I knew the line had been crossed, that what we shared could not be excused as shelter or circumstance. Yet I didn't move away. Instead, I closed my eyes, surrendering to the moment, even as guilt stirred like a shadow at the edge of the flame. Dawn crept into the tent like an intruder, thin streaks of pale light piercing the canvas. I opened my eyes slowly, disoriented, the weight of warmth pressing against me before memory settled in. Her arm was draped over my waist, her breathing deep and steady, as though she had no doubts about where she belonged. For a long moment I didn't move. The scent of smoke lingered in her hair, mingled with something softer, lavender perhaps. My body still hummed with the echo of the night, every kiss replaying itself in fragments. Yet beneath the glow of remembered passion lay a raw edge of guilt that gnawed at me. I thought of the person I had left behind, the one who trusted me enough not to question why I needed the road. I had justified it as self-discovery, as freedom. But freedom had led me here, into another woman's arms, into promises I never meant to make. She stirred, her grip tightening as though she sensed my thoughts. "Morning," she murmured, voice husky from sleep. Her eyes blinked open, bright even in the dim light, and she smiled. "You stayed." The word hit me harder than it should have. As if choice had been more than instinct, as if the night had meant more than surrender. I forced a smile, though it felt fragile on my lips. "It was warm." She chuckled softly, pressing a kiss to my shoulder before sitting up. "You don't have to pretend it was only that." Her gaze lingered, direct and unwavering. "You wanted this as much as I did. I saw it in you the moment we met." Her confidence both unsettled and enthralled me. She was so sure of herself, of us, while I felt tangled in a knot of longing and regret. I wanted to deny her, to claim the night was a mistake, but my silence betrayed me. Outside, the camp stirred to life. Horses whinnied, voices rose, and the sound of metal striking against stone carried through the trees. The world was moving again, and soon I would have to decide whether I belonged in it or here, beside her. She reached for her boots, lacing them with calm precision. "You could stay," she said quietly, almost as if offering a secret. "Not just for another night. Longer. I don't care where you came from or who's waiting for you. I want you here." The words struck like an arrow, both promise and temptation. A life with her, untamed, passionate, free, unfurled before my eyes. But tethered to it was the weight of betrayal, the face of someone who believed in my honesty. I looked down at my hands, torn between the heat of her touch and the cold of the truth. When I finally lifted my eyes, she was watching me, patient but unyielding. "So," she said, voice steady, "what are you going to choose?" The road stretched before me like a question without an answer. My bike rattled beneath me, its familiar hum grounding me after a night that had upended everything I thought I knew about myself. The trees thinned, sunlight flickering through gaps as if the forest itself was reluctant to let me go. Every mile carried her voice with me. "Stay here. You're so hot. I don't want to let you go." Those words clung tighter than her hands ever had, echoing in the back of my mind until I could barely hear the sound of the river beside me. I should have felt relief, riding away from temptation, from danger, from the betrayal that now pressed against my chest like a hidden wound. Instead, the further I rode, the emptier the road felt. The freedom I had longed for seemed hollow, stretched thin without her presence filling it. The guilt was real, I could not deny that. Someone far away still believed in me, still trusted that my journey was about discovery, not deceit. And yet, in the space of one night, another truth had been born. I had discovered something, perhaps the most dangerous thing of all. The capacity to feel alive in ways I had forgotten. I stopped at a bend in the trail, dismounting to rest. The silence pressed in, broken only by the whisper of leaves. My hands tightened around the handlebars, torn between turning back and pressing forward. Going back meant surrendering completely to her, to a life of wildfire passion, but also to the ashes it might leave behind. Going forward meant carrying her ghost with me, haunting every horizon I chased. The choice was cruel, but perhaps that was what freedom truly was. Not escape, not release, but the burden of choosing what parts of yourself you were willing to betray. I closed my eyes, the image of her face painted vividly against my lids. Confident, beautiful, unyielding. She had wanted me to stay, not as a guest, not as a passing flame, but as something permanent. That certainty both thrilled and terrified me. When I opened my eyes again, the road was still waiting. And I realized that for now, I had chosen movement over stillness. But deep down I knew the truth. Some roads loop back no matter how far you try to ride away. I swung my leg over the bike, the engine coughing to life. The forest receded in my mirror, but not her. She lingered in my chest, in my breath, in the way the horizon seemed to whisper her name. And though I rode forward, a part of me remained behind, lying in that tent, in her arms, in the heat of a night that changed everything.